Okay, and we're live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Brew Ha Ha. As you can see, we're not in our usual location. We are here with the amazing Two Warriors Meadery, doing a interview talking about what they make and how they do it. I'm here with Kurt and Cameron.
How y'all doing?
We're going to, try out some meads today. Have them sample of our own homemade mead and tell us how bad it is. And hopefully we can make some better stuff, drink some good stuff, and just have a blast.
Yeah. If nothing else, it'll be a learning experience.
Yeah.
I feel like this.
So let's go ahead and get into it. You guys want to tell us a little bit about what all you're about?
Yeah, sure. So the story is, 2015, I believe it was?
Yeah, somewhere around there.
Yeah, it's been so much has happened. 2015, we met at Governor's Cigar Shop in Monroe, Louisiana, and we were discussing, actually we had just started keeping bees, and Kurt had walked in one day and we were talking about beekeeping, and he said, would you like some honey? And I said, no man, I just started keeping bees myself, give it to somebody else. And while we were talking over a cigar, I said, hey, you were in Germany, right? And he goes, yeah, I was over there. I said, you ever tried mead in Germany? He goes, yeah. And we got to talking about that, and next thing you know, I said, you ever thought about making mead? And his infamous lines were,
how hard can it be?
how hard can it be? Who knew that would lead to this? And then, we had some success with some contests, entered some contests. The next thing you know, we decided to go legal, went the legal route and became a meadery. First meadery in Louisiana. You want to add anything to that?
Well, I was just going to say that the two clinchers that we had that finally decided to go legal was I had several homebrews that placed very well in the Mazer Cup, and I even won a third place in the Mazer Cup for homebrewing.
Yeah,
so
your experimental mead.
Yeah.
And see, I actually remember the first time I was introduced to y'all was at the Celtic Fest,
Mm-hmm.
when y'all were letting people try the mead that had won
was
a
FTL,
couple ribbons. And I was like, this is great.
Yeah.
Y'all need a place. And that was so long ago.
That was Louisiana Nectar at that point in time. Originally we were calling it something else. And it came from another name that my son popped a joke, because I like the sweeter meads.
Yeah.
And I made a 8%, and I told my son, I said, man, this one's a little hot, because I was liking the other ones. Well, when I made the Louisiana Nectar, he said, well, Dad, if the 8% is hot, this 12% is going to be faster than light. So
FTL.
we called it FTL for a long time.
So to jump back off of that, we opened our business 2019, sold out in 48 hours, 24 hours?
24.
Like yeah, we sold everything we had. I think it was like 600 bottles in a very short amount of time. Mm-hmm. Had to regroup, reopened in February of 2020, and then what happened in March of 2020? The big C, and so we were shut down for a couple months, and then had to work it selling out the door, and still had great success that year. Was forced to buy the building with that in that year, and then the 2021, we bought the building in February of 2021, made one payment on the building, and then in March 31st, the building burned down. We had the location we're sitting at now. There used to be a house, and next door is where the old building was, and at 2 o'clock in the morning, somebody set their closet on fire, and it jumped over and got us and burned us to the ground. So we've had a lot of ups and downs, and
What were the ups?
Oh yeah, we made mead, man. We made good mead, and I will say this: props to Curtis. Out of all of this, and we got back, I think, in the midst of, hey, your building burned down. We had sent off Odin's Love to the Mazer Cup. Actually, a lot of things at Mazer Cup. He likes getting the feedback from the judges. So that's something for y'all to know. If you're making mead, send it off, get the feedback, because they're not going to BS you. So anyway. All that being said, in the midst of our fire, we get, hey, by the way, you placed fourth in the world on the I think, what is this, Methicillin, on the Methicillin side. So Kurt makes really good mead, and if it was not for our fans, we probably would not have reopened. So I mean, it's just it was y'all who wanted this, and so we're doing something for the veterans, because we're both veterans. and a portion of all of our all of our money goes to help veterans in this community. So that's our mission, and to use Louisiana products. And that's it. I'm not going to talk anymore about that.
Well, that's one of the things I wanted to ask about. If you've been back to the Mayhaw Cup, and you just said y'all
Mazer Cup?
Mazer.
No, because of we are listed as a professional instead of home brewers, and to compete, it has to be completed in a professional or in a commercial meadery or commercial setting. And we just got everything rebuilt and the licensing back up and online. I believe it was April. And so I forget when the Mazer Cup is, but I think it's later in the year.
Yeah. So hopefully we'll be sending that. I think, and we may get into that later, but supposedly, and look, there's no definites in the mead world. Supposedly, this is the first Mayhaw mead commercially made.
I'm relatively confident in saying, because of all the questions that I went through with the Fed, we had to finally get down and I had to call the Louisiana Ag Center to get the scientific genus and species of the tree, because the Fed had no idea what a Mayhaw was.
The viewers may not know what a Mayhaw is either.
And so
tell them
I
what
got
it
it.
is.
I got it. And so the Fed didn't know what it was. And so I'm relatively confident in saying we're the first ones to probably make a mead out of it, maybe the first ones to make alcohol out of it.
Definitely,
But-
you're in the South Wind moment.
Yes. So Mayhaw is a primarily southern fruit, primarily grows in swampy areas. Mostly in Louisiana, it is used for jellies because it is very tart. I liken it to a green persimmon almost.
But that's not how it
No,
tastes after it's finished.
no.
right?
After it's sweetened and fermented, it is so much better. But I'm just talking the raw fruit itself. I would describe it as about the size of a crab apple, and kind of has a similar look to some crab apples.
Did you say they domesticated this how long ago? About 50
Oh,
years ago?
I think they've done something about that about 50 years ago is when they started domesticating it. But up until that point in time, it was primarily just grown wild in the swamps.
And then this year, the frost, we had a big frost earlier this year, and it killed 85 to 90% of the commercial Mayhaw, what berries, what do you would call it, fruits?
Well, not just the Mayhaw,
Blossoms.
not just the Mayhaw. Pretty much all of the fruits: the peaches, the pears, the blueberries, blackberries. Everything has suffered
Luckily-
this year.
Luckily, you had purchased this in advance last
Yeah.
year, and somebody was holding on to it for us. I think we have maybe one more batch left of that. But anyway, sorry. We will talk. We will
No,
talk.
go right
it's
at it.
interesting. It's
Yeah. But all this talk about the Mayhaw, I kind of want to try it now.
Sure.
Okay.
I actually, do you want to start with the nectar, because we want to go from dry to sweet, if that's okay.
Yeah, well, we
y'all-
can start with the nectar.
Have y'all had nectar before?
years ago.
Okay.
Reusing your bottles.
I'm gonna pass them on down.
That's from
And I'll let Kurt talk about
21-0.
his
Well-
concept of this mead too.
Well, while we're doing that, have y'all tried to brew other kinds of alcohol or booze or anything?
No.
No.
Just mead? Just mead?
Well, there are a lot of similarities between, let's say, mead and beer, but there is a lot of differences as well. I've had some friends that I've talked to that do a lot of beer, home brewing, and other wines, and
They want to drink the mead. Well, I also want to talk about beer here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and so go ahead.
This is our dry. Yeah.
Yeah, this is our dry. It is a 12%. It's got pretty good fruit and floral notes on it that comes from the honey. Like I
always
said, I
amazed by-
like the sweeter ones personally.
I'm always amazed by the people. We've find that people generally either freaking love it, they're I'm not sure, and then I don't like this, So I always tell them, if you don't like this, you're not gonna hurt our feelings.
No.
We'll find something that'll fit your
I'm a
palate.
big fan of the drier meads. Topher, who's one of our crew that didn't make it today, he and I started brewing beer back around 2013, before my son was born.
We already got them out there.
And so that's what got us started. And we started out with beer kits, and then eventually we produced it was the most expensive beer we made, and we produced 10 gallons of it. That was the year that we almost produced enough alcohol to exceed the amount you can legally make without having to
Register.
because we made so many other ones. But we made a Pilsner, which is really hard to do here in Louisiana because lagering is difficult in this climate. So once we did that and we realized how much we were spending on making beer, we went, how about we try to make mead, because that seems like it might be a little bit cheaper.
Wow.
You
famous
surprise.
last word.
Yeah, exactly. Surprise.
A lot of the reason
crazy.
I bring that up is the very first couple meads we made were really, really dry because we use champagne yeast. And so the first mead I ever really drank was what I made myself, and it was not flavor wise, but the dryness is very similar. So I really like the dry.
And I'm glad you dropped said champagne yeast, because that's exactly what I was thinking. Because it wasn't drying out my mouth like a really dry wine, but like a champagne would, just a little bit in the end.
I think Kurt has really found that each like areas of the United States, maybe, or especially here, the varietals of honey, you have to find the yeast that really likes that honey, because you've done a lot of experiments, and there's different yeast that like different.
But now, here's my theory. Okay, this is theory. Different honeys have different micronutrients in them, and so because of what the honey or what the bees are eating, and so I had one honey that I was getting that was from up a little bit north of West Monroe, that I was using Lavalin D47 with, and that yeast liked that honey. Well, I started getting honey from our larger supplier, coming in from down Jonesboro and Rayville area, and D47 didn't like it. And I found out that Red Star Premier Blanc loves it. So I think, like I said, I think it has to do with the type of yeast and the micronutrients that is in the honey pairing up well together. You could probably overcome that a little bit by using yeast supplements and yeast nutrients. I don't do that. I use as few chemicals as possible.
Well, we
So
just tried.
you tried the nectar. So here's the Mayhaw. Who has not had that yet?
I haven't.
Okay, you have not either.
I haven't had the
Okay, so enjoy. This is very sweet. It's very. If
Yep.
y'all have ever had Mayhaw jelly on toast, this to me reminds me very much of buttered toast with Mayhaw jelly.
Yeah.
It's really good.
That's good.
Yeah.
So this is just sweet all the way through.
Yeah.
Whereas with the Louisiana nectar, I got a lot of floral and then on the front end and just a lot of dryness in the back end, which is one. But this is sweet all the way through, and you're getting a lot of interesting flavors. There's a lot going on there, and I can't put my finger on it.
Yeah.
Oh, it takes a little bit.
Like I said, it's just my grandma's house. Like that, made her own jelly all the time. This is a flavor.
Oh yeah. Well, it took me a few trials to get that one. And funny story, I do everything and keep notes on a clipboard. And when I do an experimental batch, I'm monitoring times, temps, pH, everything as closely as possible so that I can replicate when we get done. Well, the night, March 30th of 2021, the Mayhaw was an experimental in one of the tanks. And I had done 3 or 4 different batches and had gotten this one and went, yeah, this one's right. And had several other people that had confirmed that this one was right. And so, for some odd reason, I'm walking by and I look down at my clipboard and I go, I don't have that anywhere. Click, took a picture of it. That night, at about 2 o'clock in the morning, the meadery burnt, and I'd have lost that recipe.
And your recipes were in the safe.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, he was worried sick. He's like, all of our recipes are in the safe.
So I had a little question written down of like if any recipes had changed or like had to be refound because of the fire, because like you had some stuff nailed down. Like Gordon's Love was nailed down.
Yeah.
And then the fire happened. I was like, and I was always worried that there would be something that had to change because you just couldn't find it or didn't have everything?
Well, part of the requirement for the federal license is that I have to register not just my recipe, but the label. And the label and the recipe have to be tied together. So essentially, I have to give the Fed my entire recipe.
So government had a copy of it.
Government had a copy of it.
Yeah. But luckily, no. Thankfully, no. I
Yeah.
think the only things that really, at this point, that would change things up is if we have like issues with getting products, like the blueberries. We actually had to. We normally source our blueberries from a local farm called Brown Blueberry Farm, which they have amazing blueberries. They couldn't do it this year, so we actually, I think 90% of that came through was fans, people who came just brought us blueberries and said, "Here, take our blueberries." So we're very thankful for that. So you're going to enjoy your blueberries.
The community always come out.
People just bringing in fruits for us. So lastly, before we forget, Odin's Love. I want to say this about Odin's because this is his award winner. You can tell the story about Jaron too if you want. But every batch we make of Odin's is different. It's because everything is all natural and how we all cutting in everything up by hand, and so every batch is different. Our first batch that we did was like more cinnamony. The second batch was more lemony, more citrus. I can't remember the third batch. I think was more lemony or something.
I think that was a little more citrus as well.
And then, but this batch, because there's lemon, ginger, cinnamon, and clove. This batch is more ginger forward with the cinnamon right behind it. Okay. And so I freaking love this batch. People come in, they're like, "This is our best batch so far." So Kurt has this saying, "If you like this
one, buy several bottles." One of the things I do is I make sure to batch code every bottle, so that you can, come back and see. Yeah, I liked this batch, and that's why when you rolled that one around there and said that one.
Your hand.
Yeah, that was when we were hand jamming that 2102. So that's
pretty old.
Yeah. That was the second
now just
batch.
imagine how good that mead, because mead ages in the bottle. Y'all know that, right?
Yeah.
So
ours doesn't, because once it hits the house,
that's what we're hoping for. No.
I'm just saying, anytime we bought from y'all, it doesn't last long enough to age.
Good. Well, y'all enjoyed. Tell me what you think. Notes on this one. Cheers.
Oh, that's delightful. I like the little bit of a burn right at the very end, that little bit of extra.
Cinnamon, the little bit of cinnamon on that.
We've had a lot of success with this one, and the fact that there's a local steakhouse in Shreveport called Superior Steakhouse. I'm sure y'all have heard of it. One of the largest, best steakhouse in Louisiana. They use this in old fashioned, and so instead of simple syrup, they'll put this in there. And to me, this makes an incredible old fashioned.
Never thought about putting
there you
meat in
go.
old fashioned.
There you go.
You ever thought about cooking with it?
We've talked about our old fashioned recipes.
Cooking with meat?
Yes.
No, I haven't, because usually I sit there and just drink all of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Louisiana nectar. Take a quarter cup of Louisiana nectar and 4 chicken breasts. Throw it in a Ziploc bag. I pitch about a half a teaspoon of garlic. And just a splash of soy sauce, and let it marinate overnight. Okay, when you're done with the marinade, pull it out, pat it dry. I like a little bit of seasoned salt, or if you want to just throw a whatever your herb rub is on there, and then grill. So yeah, it's pretty simple. And pretty straightforward, but any recipe that you've got that you want to substitute white, or you can substitute mead for white wine.
We were just about to explain how this got its name, so come around back.
Come on, Jaron.
Come walk around back real quick. So Jaron is our apprentice mead maker. Him and Kurt have been working. Come around all the way back.
Yeah, come on.
They have been working together since the beginning. So why don't you tell them why Odin's is misspelled, Jaron?
Because it's not misspelled.
It's not?
It's not. That is my wife's maiden name.
Oh.
And that's how it's spelled. And I came up with a crazy name for it because I didn't think it was going to do anything. And Kurt talked me out of that one.
He was going to call it Fantastic Disaster. And I'm going, no, I can't get behind that one.
And I was sitting there, and we were thinking about some stuff, and I remembered that my wife actually pushed me to do this because I didn't want to do it at first. And she said, take a shot on yourself, see what happens. So I decided to name it after her and her encouragement.
You picked up a good one too. How did you find the recipe while we get the whole details?
Well, I was thinking about what would I want to drink. So I basically went off of like some of my best memories were around Christmas. So I went off of like, it's hard to explain how I searched for this, but I did find it. But I searched based on what I wanted it to taste like. Yeah. And that led me to this old recipe that I found.
Yeah, 12th century English, you
Yeah.
call it? Yeah. So they would have drank this traditionally during the Christmas holidays, warm, caroling, or I guess maybe to keep them warm, because it definitely has a warming effect.
It does, yeah.
But Jaron, you picked a good one, buddy.
Thanks, man.
Thank you. Jaron, again, he's technically the third warrior of all this, or fourth, whatever. Your wife is the third warrior.
Yeah.
But Jaron helps makes this show happen. So if y'all see him, give him a thank you. So y'all got any other questions for Jaron? Well, or us? We don't know.
No, I just love that y'all brought up the holidays because that's the first thing I remembered about Odin's Love, because I bought it and thought the exact same thing, and so I bought another one to carry me through the Christmas season of like, I think that was 2020.
Yeah,
I
well,
didn't find it.
and the thing is that, everybody asks what, how should we drink it? Rocks, cold, warm, what? And I always say it's your preference, because Odin does very well heated up, just a little bit, about body temperature. It really changes the spice profile in that one. And the Mayhaw, I like at room temperature. The Louisiana Nectar is I like it cold.
That's a good tip. So if you do make your own meads, try them at different levels of heat and cold. Room temperature.
Yeah.
You'll notice that they change this tremendously.
Okay, well, we gotta get one obligatory question out that I think we haven't answered yet or asked yet, just for everybody that'll be watching this later, is what exactly is mead?
Mead is wine made from honey. That's essentially what it is. It is where most wines are generally derive most of their sugars from either fruit or from fruit or grapes. Grape is a fruit. But mead primarily derives most of its sugars for the alcohol from honey.
The word mead, it comes from the Vikings. It's actually MJOD, and how they would have pronounced it would be mead, and the English bastardized it into mead. So and all that meant was honey water. They had no concept of yeast. It was magic. The nectar of the gods. That's the whole nectar of the gods came from mead. The word honeymoon comes from mead. When you got married, gifts were made and mead was bought, that you would go and for 30 days, a whole lunar cycle, go and get drunk and make babies. And then if the baby was born soon afterwards, the mead maker got a bonus. And if a boy was born,
if a male child,
it's
another bonus.
So mead has been there since the dawn of time. We're just happy to be a part of it, and we also like to say that history has never tasted so good. So it's kind of like our little slogan. But
so like in the past, we've made some stuff or brewed our own little meads and everything. We've had some failed batches.
Okay.
The blackberry.
The blackberry was a disaster. But was there any
awful.
like failed batches or any things just didn't work?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Oh yes. And usually I get that sorted out in small batches before it goes to the large. Now, that being said, I had a couple of large batches that were set up for the opening, and I didn't like them. They weren't up to standard.
yeah.
And so what I ended up doing is I've transferred them over to use whiskey barrels.
Yeah.
And because the old mindset was that you didn't drink a mead that was under a year old. Now, reason why, I don't know, but I think that it was probably due to the fact that they were using wild yeast most of the time. Did wild yeast possibly put an off flavor in it? Maybe. And maybe it dissipated over time. I'm going to find out.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if I got a wild yeast mixed in or I got some honey that was starting to ferment. I don't know, but
The old adage with making mead is if you have a bad mead, set it in the closet and forget about it and come back to it later, because at some point it's going to be good. And we actually remember the cherry mead we made at the very
I liked it.
Yeah.
You didn't.
Well, I didn't care for it at all, man. I was like, this tastes tart, it's nasty, and I said it. I think we had made I don't remember how many bottles of that we made, but I put some up in my closet, and then we popped it like 3 or 4 years later, and it was fantastic. And I was like, hey, how come we didn't make more of this? You said you hated this. I was like, oh, okay, well. So anyway, if y'all have any trouble with your meads, set it in the closet and forget about it for a while.
So that what y'all just said kind of made me think of two things. One of which is a question. Knox, a friend of ours who plays D&D on our Monday night game, was going through a flea market and found a 1954 wine book.
okay.
I told him, send me the worst ones you can find, plus if there's anything for mead or figs. So the first thing he sent me was a fig wine.
Really?
So I got a fig tree planted in my backyard, but my old house, I have a 15-foot fig tree that my uncle who bought the house has not cut down and won't. So whenever it starts to produce, I'm going to be making fig mead.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
And then the mead one made me laugh because like there's some other ones. There's turnip and beet and parsnip, and then he's making corn wine. So we're going to see how that. The other one that he sent me that is the absolute worst is tomato wine.
I've heard of that.
But the mead recipe has no yeast. It's boil the honey, put it in a bowl with a tea cloth over it, leave it for a couple days, and then bottle it and don't touch it for a year. So I'm assuming that's getting the wild yeast and then you're letting it slowly ferment. But the thing is that the very front of the cover of this book is like a 1950s housewife. And I'm sitting there going, this is when you were hard up for alcohol back in the day. You didn't, like there was the stigma of going to the liquor store. So you're going to, like, I'm going to take these turnips.
We don't have alcohol in this house, but we do have some water and honey that I haven't touched like in 2 years. So you can have a sip of that. It'll make you feel better. But no, we don't do alcohol.
Hey, for anybody who's local who wants to learn how to make mead, we do mead classes. So we do not mind about sharing how we do it. I'm not sure.
Most
Kurt,
things.
Kurt doesn't
Most
tell you everything,
things.
but he will get you started down the path of making amazing meads, because that's we have got to, as what would we call ourselves? We're
Educators.
Educators first and foremost of this product. Yeah, we have a business, but we want to teach y'all about this because it helps us too.
I was going to say the other question I had that was on here that you mentioned, getting those bad flavors out in a small batch. Have you ever noticed a difference when you make a small batch and then you upscale it? Is there a difference in flavor sometimes? Is the calculation sometimes off?
Well, there are some things that don't scale proportionally. For example, the amount of yeast is one of the things that I've found that does not scale directly proportional. As to the flavors, generally the process remains the same, so that generally scales proportionally. But making it larger, you end up with more headaches.
I think Kurt has to control the yeast more too at that point, because you got a lot of yeast in there, and it'll take off on you. He's very like a hawk watching that yeast.
I know that when we upscaled, when we moved from making 1 gallon beers to making 5 gallon, and then moved from 5 gallon to making 10 gallons, other than buying equipment or modifying a very large cooler to be a steeping tank, that upscaling from 1 gallon to 5 gallon was a headache. Upscaling from 5 gallon to 10 gallon was not as bad, because it kind of from that point proportionally started growing, but from that 1 gallon tester to 5 gallons.
Yeah. That's why I primarily do a lot of my test runs in 5 gallon, because the thing is that if I am doing a 1 gallon batch, the amount of let's take Odin here, and doing a 1 gallon batch of Odin, And the amount of ginger, cinnamon, lemon, and clove in there is so small that just a minor fluctuation in there can throw it off. And so when you scale to 5 gallons, you've got a little bit more of a leeway in that, so that if you get extra clove in there or 2, it's not as noticeable as it would be if you're doing a 1 gallon batch. As I recall, I've got somewhere around 20 grams of cloves in a 100 gallon batch. So that's a couple of teaspoons maybe. And if I get an extra clove or 2 in there, it's not a big deal on a 100 gallon batch. 5 gallon, you might notice it a bit more. On a 1 gallon, oh yeah, you're going to notice it considerably.
Another thing I want to pop in here on this is our Bochet. He had to figure out how we're going to cook the Bochet on a large scale level, because there's not many commercial brewers or commercial mead makers who make a Bochet, because of the simple fact when you cook honey, it expands.
And you get a war wound.
It expands
It
8
becomes
times its
snowball.
volume.
Yes.
You put it in a gallon and it expands to 8 gallons. So we had to find a vessel big enough to cook 5 gallons at a time, because it takes him all day, 2 days,
2
both
days
of them, to make Bochet. And we only make it once a year. It is our seasonal. He would kill me if I asked him to do it more than once a year. But he got a war wound this past time. It pops
every time.
It's like
this is scars from the last one 2.5 years ago.
It's generally the same method of making candy, and you got to cook it. And we have a certain recipe that we get it to. But again, that's if y'all had our Bochet.
That's he
Yes.
allowed me to drink it in the
Yeah.
back. It was
So, and I'll tell you, a Bochet just means burnt. It's the French word for burnt, Bochet. It's French like to French things up. I think that's a 13th century recipe or something along that lines. We took it and made it our style, and then our good friend Friday Ellis, who's now the mayor of Monroe, told us, he goes, "Boys, y'all live in Louisiana. You're making a Bochet. Call it Bobby Bochet." And if y'all are from Louisiana or watch The Water Boy, Bobby Bochet was the main star of it. So,
I've always
Bobby
wondered where the name
Bochet.
came
yeah.
from.
Bochet was his name.
No, his
get away
name was
from that
Bochet.
movie.
It was Bochet, but it wasn't Bochette. It was.
Well, I made sure I checked it to make sure it wasn't spelled the same.
We didn't spell it exactly the same, but anyway, so that's
Close
our.
enough.
That's been a big hit for us too. So
We're actually talking about that on the way up.
yeah,
Yeah.
it'll be ready. Hopefully, fingers crossed, the first week of October. So we'll have that for the Christmas holidays, and we're doing everything now is going to be seasonal. So as it comes into season, we're going to be buying hopefully enough to last us for the next year.
Not this year.
Not this year, next year, but so
the
when
frost-
season,
the frost got us.
hits, I think the big issues Kurt's our issues that we're going to have to figure out is how we're going to make things that are primarily water taste like that thing, like say strawberries, Kurt.
Oh, get away from me.
Yeah.
Get away from me.
Strawberries, watermelon, peaches. Even we love peaches here. So we have got to figure out, because they're like 99% water and 1% flavor. How do you translate that, and at what point do you ferment those? Because you want them to basically be almost to the point of rotting to have the most flavor. And then the peach flavor that comes out, the last one we did, I didn't think it was peachy enough. But hopefully this batch we're going to try it again. So
that's something my wife would like. She's a big fan of Ghost Soda, LaCroix.
never had that one.
So at any time when we've tried to add fruit, with the exception of the Fell Blackberry and then these two, that they're kind of there. But the other time when we made a blueberry one and it was good, it was still kind of a LaCroix that somebody said blueberry in another room while you were drinking. You're like, I guess.
Well, look, let's taste y'all's.
That was kind of my that's my strawberry.
And this one's mine. So,
So this is
blood orange.
So this is the blood orange. I'll
Okay.
let
Blood
you
orange?
pour it.
okay. Blood orange.
Yep.
I'll keep telling Kurt when he needs to make a satsuma, which is a
Yes.
Louisiana. We like
We're getting
to
close.
we like to make local Louisiana fruits. Meads from that. There you go.
So, where do you source all your stuff? I know you all try to stay local. How's that?
We find farms
Process.
and call those farms and say, and we say, hey, we're this meadery, and then take the whole process of explaining what we are, and then generally they will want to send us some. But look, we try to find farms across Louisiana. That's the big thing. So explain to us before we drink this, your process, your thoughts behind this. It's a blood orange.
Yes.
So for years, Topher, who's not here with us, he and I wanted to make a blood orange pale ale.
Okay.
And name it Nosferatu.
Nice.
Because there's a place down in New Orleans called the St. James Cheese Company. If y'all go down there, try it. The first time I walked in, everybody looked like hipsters, and I was like, I don't know if I've walked in. And then I see a dude butchering a pig in the back and go, what's he doing? Oh, we make all our own cold cuts. I'm like, I'm in the right place.
Yeah.
Cool.
And so they had a blood orange pale ale that I was there on the teacher summit. I ended up going there for lunch every day after I discovered it. And it was so good we wanted to do it. We just never got around to it. So then we were like, well, let's make blood orange mead. The problem is blood oranges show up here like once a blue moon. So I found some at Whole Foods in Lafayette while I was down there for officiating a wedding. And so, oh no, it was before that.
It was before that.
But I feel like, the first thing I say is I feel like we should have done more blood oranges. It's there, but next time we do this, I want the flavor to be just a little bit stronger.
Mm-hmm.
So, Kurt, what are your smelling notes? What are you smelling? Keep in mind, he will be honest about this.
So we had to go. The
Be
problem
honest.
is we had to go back and back sweeten this one.
Yes.
Because it came out. The first hit was very orangey, but it was also extremely tart, which I liked. But the other folks that helped make it, they like them.
How did y'all kill the yeast?
We just let it sit for so long.
You let it ferment dry.
Yeah.
Okay. So what are we looking at here? About a 12%?
We don't have a gravity kit.
Okay.
I think it's closer to 14. maybe.
No.
It's
doesn't-
definitely hotter than the nectar, though.
No,
Yeah.
it's not.
I don't think so.
I think it is.
No.
I'm getting a little bit of burn on my tongue.
Maybe 10?
Yeah, I would venture a 10, possibly 12, but yep, blood orange is definitely there.
We didn't get.
I think one of the things that would improve the flavor is if you cold crashed it and for a couple of days and then let it re-racked it.
So just kill the yeast in the fridge and then.
What I was doing home brewing is I had my 5-gallon fermenter, and I would put it in a larger bucket and just dump ice around it and wrap it in blankets and let it set for a couple of days so that it cold crashes. I'm getting a little bit of the bready note of the yeast still being in it. And
Did you filter this?
No.
most homebrewers can't filter. I mean, it's too expensive.
Every mead we've made has been clear. For a while, we did actually add. This is years ago. We added Irish moss to try to clarify it, but it never really got it clear. So every mead I've ever made's really been opaque.
Okay. There's a lot of different things that can cause the opaqueness, opacity, whatever you want to call it. Can be a protein haze. You could use a little pectic enzyme. You could possibly use a little clear gelatin. And so those things.
He tried everything from electrolysis at one time. We tried that at one time. That was crazy.
Yeah, the problem was it was separating the water, the hydrogen and the oxygen out instead of, because I was trying to go super low voltage and I couldn't get it low enough that it wasn't separating the hydrogen, it wasn't busting the
He
molecules.
has literally tried everything you can think of.
And so, but very nice. It's right in my wheelhouse for the sweetness level. Good orange flavor. If you think it doesn't have enough orange flavor, try throwing a little bit more in there. And the question is, I would think about doing it on the secondary fermentation. So you do it primary fermentation and then add a little bit more to bolster the orange flavor on secondary.
And I may be giving away a slight secret.
Then don't say it.
No, it's really not that big. You tell that to everybody. It's freeze it.
No,
the-
no.
Freeze the fruits.
Oh, the fruits.
Freeze
Yeah,
the
it's
fruit.
the raspberry we used frozen raspberries,
Yeah.
but we used, what was it, 2 pounds?
Yeah, we
2
had a
pounds
whole.
of, our friend Cannon, who lives in Mississippi, he does scuffadine, muscadine wines and makes his own meads. In fact, he made one taste like Mountain Dew. He will not, literally tasted like 100% like the beverage. Will not tell us how he did it. But the most dangerous thing he's ever made is he called it Jesus juice. It was literally, he added wine yeast to water and sugar and let it sit for 6 months, and then he went to an event called Wasteland out in California. He came back with more stuff than he went with because he traded it. And I was like, that's because you gave everybody like low-key Everclear.
Yeah.
But no, his method is you take the juice and you replace that much of the water in a 1 gallon batch with the juice, and that's what we did for the primary, and we really we went with as much as we could because that's all we had. But next time we make it, I think might not double, but maybe another half of that.
Do you know why we were saying to freeze the fruit though?
It breaks down the cellular walls
Correct.
and makes it easier to
More flavor.
So the only reason I wouldn't do that with the oranges, I have a 9-year-old who likes to, anytime he finds something, the first thing that's going to happen is chunk.
Kids ruin everything.
Yes.
Yeah, it's and oh no, if we get the 3 of our boys together,
That's hilarious.
Yeah, the three of our
somebody's
boys
getting
do-
hit with an orange.
Well,
It's great.
I
It
don't
comes
think
into
I
a
would
snack
freeze
like
them. I would peel them and then freeze them.
Okay, that's a good idea.
I think that's how I would do it, because the trying to peel a frozen orange is going to be problematic.
Yeah.
It's fair.
But it's very tasty, and the mouthfeel stays on your palate. It's very good. I like it. Let's try the next one.
All right, so this is our raspberry mead that we
We
tried.
made both of them the same night, and that's actually, I don't think it's up on Twitch anymore because how short stuff stays up on
Yeah.
Twitch. It's definitely underneath the Brew Ha Ha. Oh, that one's smoking.
So
A little,
y'all,
little carbonation.
so
Yeah.
y'all brew this live?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
we'll do the original.
That's
stuff
why the
that we did.
blackberry was such a disappointment. As we went back and watched the video of us being so excited, the whole house smelled so good while we're making it. And then
I put more blackberries than we expected to put in there. 'Cause
Okay.
Someone said, "Hey, you smush up all those blackberries," and we're
You picked a
running
really
for
good
the
bottle too.
Yeah.
Great bottle. And then it
Well,
turned
I don't
out
know
all
if you
the
noticed,
blackberries
but
were
this
gone.
this bottle might look a
Yeah,
bit
it
familiar
does.
too.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't
We
know.
like to use high quality
I
bottles.
think
Yes.
I actually put in the wrong stopper because at home there is a Scotch bottle, a bourbon bottle, 2 more year bottles, and a whiskey bottle that's similar in shape.
Yes.
Well, the size of the opening is pretty uniform. So
Yeah.
whether you use ours or somebody else's,
It kind of works.
yeah.
Cheers.
Cheers.
This is your raspberry?
Yes.
Again, we had to back sweeten this one too because we underdid the honey by about a half pound. Because when this
Do
one
you
came-
let it completely finish fermenting, correct though? You let it ferment dry.
Are you making a 1 gallon or a 5 gallon
1
bag?
gallons.
Okay, so how much honey did you throw into a 1 gallon?
We put in four pounds of honey,
Okay, so that is okay.
and it came out really dry, really tart for both of them, which also that's part of the fruit notes. So we went and added another half pound of honey.
If my math is correct, and I'm doing this in my head on the fly, that should be real close to giving you about possibility of about up to 14%. And so if it fermented dry, you probably got in somewhere close to that. Because rule of thumb for me is 5 quarts of honey in a 5 gallon batch will give me 12. But 6 quarts, which is, I'm not even thinking pounds, but 6 quarts will get me to about 15, 16%. And so that's why I'm thinking you should be somewhere around 14-ish.
See, we used to have a gravity kit, but had a kid, moved, stuff went.
Kids ruin everything.
Well, no, it was, make room for all the baby stuff. I had to get rid of a bunch of other stuff. So it went to a friend, that friend's moved, and we have no clue where, like we had the when we were still brewing beer, we had the ability to make 10 gallons at a time, which I believe it's 50 gallons is.
I don't know. I'm not up on the beer side.
Yeah.
I think it was 50 gallons of non-hard alcohol that you could produce in a household by state law. And technically it could also be by person. So we're like, we can make 100 gallons. So we bought the stuff to see if we could do it. And then we luckily never did because we found out, I think it was just 50 gallons because it was all being stored in the same place.
Yeah.
But so we originally had a gravity kit. So we make it because it's fun to stream and we sample beers and we talk, and it's in all intents and purposes, it's an excuse for us to all hang out and have a guy's night.
Exactly. I understand.
I honestly, I would drink that. That's good.
Yeah,
I love
it's
mouth feels great.
yeah. But like I said, if you were to cold crash it, throw it in the fridge for a couple of days, just that bottle, and I bet you it will settle out.
Then you can re-rack it. You have a re-racking tool and all that, right?
Yeah.
Racking arm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you do that, I think you will notice that it changes the flavor profile considerably. One of the things that I don't do is I don't use any of the adjuncts to clarify. I use gravity and time. And so, if you start looking at some of mine,
Yeah, our fruit meads do have a slight
yeah,
haze to it,
I have a haze in the fruit meads. So there's nothing to be ashamed of. Okay.
I mean, I'll be honest, if it's cloudy or opaque, I'm completely fine with that.
Yes.
My main thing is, does it taste good? Did we enjoy it? Also, did we have fun making it?
Exactly. But what I was going to say is, you get some of that sediment out, it does change the flavor profile a little bit. So if you
Give me that raspberry again.
raspberry. So if you don't, if you like the flavor but you want it a little more intense, then try cold crashing and see if that helps your flavor a little bit.
I mean, most of the other meads we have, and he hates them.
That's not true.
I've been told they're called a metheglin.
Metheglin.
Metheglin, yeah.
Metheglin, okay.
That's what Odin's is. It's spiced.
So the only reason I knew that is because of the King Killer Chronicles. And the way the guy narrating the book, some of those, like, I've seen it written, but I don't know how it's said, so I take the first person who said it is how you say it. You would say you wanted that, and it was actually getting water because you're working the bar. So if people wanted to buy you a drink, they'd pay for it. You get a glass of water, but at the end of the night, you and the bartender would split all the free drinks. So I like putting mint in mead. He dislikes it because he says it tastes too medicinal.
It brings the medicinal taste out front.
I've done experimental mint mead. It wasn't bad. I think it would make a phenomenal mead julep.
Oh, that's not gonna lie. I used it mostly to pour in tea during winter, and I did mix it because I didn't have mint simple syrup at the time for a mint julep.
Now-
So we were talking about mead cocktails on the way over here, and how we could make old fashions and stuff with mead and little simple syrups and stuff. Never thought about mint juleps.
Mead is so amazing. The fact that you can do so much with it, cooking, making cocktails, adding vodka to it. You're not going to find that with regular grape wine. You could do it, I'm sure. It tastes horrible, but and it ages in the bottle. I mean, we're very lucky to have this. It is definitely the nectar of the gods. It's magic because it does so much, and I think there's also the old wives' tales of you're eating the local honey, and I don't know if that has any proof to that drinking mead, but I'd love to drink it just to have a glass every day. Keeps us in business if you do that.
Well, I mean, the big thing, the thing I've learned about honey, and it's the reason I've been buying more local honey than just getting it off the shelf at Walmart, is, and again, like you're saying, I don't know if it's 100% true or not, but if you get honey from the area you're in, you're less likely to get a sinus infection.
That's what I've heard as well.
So I mean, and I'll be honest, the number of sinus infections I've gotten over the last couple of years since I was doing that have gone down. So I'm going to say it's a little bit true.
Yeah.
Are you buying your honey locally, or are you buying off the shelf?
I sometimes I'll get, like, for the honey I keep at work when I'm teaching, that's a Walmart bottle of honey because I don't want to worry about a spoon. But most of the time I buy Sammy's honey from out here at Sammy's Plant World.
Good.
So
I think that's Amy's. Amy Weeks. She's local. She's probably got the best honey around, and we'd buy from her, but she can't produce enough. That's what got him his third place trophy was Amy's honey, and I think that we made the FTL or something to that aspect, and we were talking to Amy because we're tasting all these fruits in there. We were tasting apple and pear and plum and apricot, and we were talking to Amy. She goes, "Oh yeah, I have all that on my farm." I'm like, "Oh my God," because we could taste that in the mead. So if you really do want to be a mead purist, you drink that, you're actually tasting where those bees have been.
talking about that, did y'all hear the story about, I think it was out in New Mexico, people were trying to figure out why the bees were producing blue honey?
I vaguely remember that. What were they? What
They
did
were
they
near
get
an
into?
M&M factory, and they were flying in, and they were eating the candy coating. And so they were coming back. So the reason it was blue is that dye would go through to the honey production. So this lady said, "Why do I have Crayola blue honey? Is it safe? What's happening? What's wrong with my bees?" No,
Yeah.
they were going over there to the M&M factory and getting a snack.
I tell you,
Note to self: make mead with blue
Blue
honey.
honey, yeah. When he makes the bochet, it is literally like the outside of the door. Well, in the old building, we'd have to fight them off making the bochet because they'd find ways in to get that honey. They wanted that honey.
There was two of us that were stirring honey, and two were chasing bees with fly swatters.
We don't have that problem right now, but
No.
we did see them on the outside of the door. They won't in.
It didn't look like they were swarming like in the old building, but there was 4 or 5 outside, and they could smell it. They wanted in, but it wasn't anywhere near the swarm that was in the old building.
It was crazy. We'd be catching bees and putting them outside, killing bees. It's crazy.
I've got one more question before we start wrapping it up.
Mm-hmm.
So I think one of the best meads we've made is we've dubbed it apple pie.
Okay.
And what we did with this one was we used, instead of using water, we used apple juice
Okay.
and honey, and it came out very apple-y tasting. We added cinnamon to it, and it tasted almost exactly like an apple pie. It was fairly high gravity, if I remember.
Yeah, because that was one of those, we drank it, and then the next day, neither one of us wanted to move.
But it was so good. So have you tried like anything outside of water and honey, or is all your stuff just water and honey, or is that a trade secret?
I have, on some of my very early experiments, used juices, but the challenge is that to get 50, 75 gallons of juice to make a large batch is a bit of a challenge for a small business. So yeah, I can get apple juice in 5-gallon buckets and things like that, but I would prefer to use local products as much as possible. And so right now I am just concentrating on what I can get local. Now, ginger, lemons, yeah, I know they're not grown local, but I'm buying them from somebody local as opposed to a food service company or something like that. I could even get honey somewhere around 30% cheaper by getting it on an online food supply. The problem is you don't know where that honey's coming from. And there have been a large quantity of honey that's coming out of China that's been adulterated with corn syrup or sometimes worse. So not interested in doing that. I want my money to stay local. And so,
We have great honey here too.
Oh yeah. I did a little research early on, and even if I was making 15, 20,000 gallons a year, I think I was going to only touch somewhere around 2% of the Louisiana honey supply. And so we've got plenty of honey in Louisiana for us to make mead for a while.
Yeah.
I think Tupelo honey ain't got nothing on Louisiana honey. So somebody needs to write a Louisiana honey wine song and send us the profits.
All right.
Thank y'all so much for having us here.
Well,
Thank y'all for letting us.
you got any
come
other
and do
questions?
this.
yeah, I've got one more.
All right.
For our viewers, where can they find out more about you?
Sure. Okay. The biggest place is Facebook. We're on Facebook at Two Warriors Meadery. You can find us on Instagram. Send us a message if you need anything. Please let me know. We do ship now. We just started shipping again. So if you go on our Facebook page, somewhere in the About section, there's a link that says Vino Shipper. Click that link, and as we produce more meads, you'll see them popping back in and things coming off. So like Mayhaw Madness is available right now. It's very limited. I think we only got like 40 bottles left of this for that Vino Shipper. And then these are there too. So if you want to try some of our mead, by all means, I'll ship it out to you.
Okay. Do y'all have any upcoming events or anything you want people to know about?
The biggest event that we do, one big event at our place every year, and hope we're going to start working on that, is our Viking Feast. The week of Veterans Day is usually when we're trying to do it. That is our big event that we give back to local veterans charities. We pick a different veterans charity. We put on a big event where we have hog roast, turkey legs, dress up like Vikings, drink some mead, and all of the like this guy, and all of the proceeds go to a veterans charity that we pick that's here locally, and then Celtic Fest is a big one. So that's kind of where we met everybody, and everybody found out about the mead. So we want to be there. What's the Tartan Fest? Yep. We're going to pick different festivals throughout Louisiana to go to, but the big one coming up is the one in November. So if y'all want in, I think it's very limited. I'm not sure exactly how many tickets we're going to do this year, but it's going to go to help charities.
All right.
Good. So thank y'all again.
Thank y'all.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And since Knox isn't here, don't let your meat loaf. Take care, everyone.
Everybody, keep touching the.
Thank you for tuning in to another Bonus Roundtable podcast brought to you by Team Bonus Action. If you'd like to find more out about us, you can go to our website at teambonusaction.com, or you can check us out on Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube as Team Bonus Action, or on Twitter at bonus_team. And since Knox is not here, don't let your meat loaf.